The Big Bang did not produce one iota of solid matter. It didn't produce protons and neutrons and electrons. It produced light beams, super energetic light beams, electromagnetic radiation. And these light beams eventually became alive. Now, it is quite a stretch of the imagination that light beams can become alive by themselves, but all of physics holds by that. Interestingly, there are ancient commentaries that hold by it also, but just let's stay with the physics of today. The Big Bang produces light beams. Somehow, by the discovery of Albert Einstein, the famous equation E equals mc squared, the light beams become solid particles of quarks. They become protons, neutrons. We have electrons. We now have the building blocks of atoms. A proton actually is the nucleus of a hydrogen. These protons, neutrons, electrons rapidly draw together. We get hydrogen and helium. There are some nuances in the process which lock the universe in after the first 3 or 4 minutes to be primarily, almost entirely in fact, hydrogen and helium. Hydrogen is great for making stars, but it's not good for making people. It just doesn't carry it off. You need things like carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, iron, potassium, calcium, the heavier elements. So what happens? In the alchemy of stars, as the gravity pulls together this hydrogen, and helium squeezes it tighter, and the hydrogen is used up, and the star implodes and explodes. In these processes within the furnace of the stars, the hydrogen, the helium, almost like nuclear Lego blocks, are built into heavier elements: hydrogen, helium, lithium, beryllium, boron, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, up the periodic table. And the elements of life now are in the universe, made from the hydrogen of the creation, which was made from the energy, the light beams of creation. So now we have light beams manifesting themselves as the heavier the elements. These elements, over eons and many processes in stars, finally get drawn together in this corner of the universe. Sun forms in the center. Rocky planets, one the third one out, Mercury, Venus, Earth, a planet just at the right distance from the sun, to have a temperature commensurate with liquid water, not so hot that the water evaporates, not so cold that the water is locked in ice, just far enough away from the sun so the gravitational force of the sun on the Earth doesn't lock the Earth, so the same face always faces the sun, which can be devastating. The moon's face, we only see one face of the moon from the Earth because it's locked gravitationally by tidal forces, so that as it goes around the Earth, the same face always forms it. Mercury has the same face facing the sun, almost only. Venus also. They're both too close. The Earth just happens to squeeze just far out into a habitable zone where it can rotate on its axis, thus distributing the intense energy of the sun over the entire surface, has just the right tilt, an excellent tilt of the axis, so that heat is distributed winter, spring, summer, and fall over both hemispheres, has one of the largest moons in the solar system, which helps maintain the stability of this 23-degree angle tilt that gives us so beautifully this distribution of heat. And on this Earth, which is so lovely tuned for life, as Scientific American points out, rocks and water, a few simple molecules, perhaps some clay, methane, ammonia, nitrogen, water, and rocks become alive. Of course, those rocks and water weren't always rocks and water. Before that, before the Earth and the solar system formed, they were stardust or previously exploded stars. And before this, they were the hydrogen and helium, which is produced in the Big Bang. And before this, they were beams of energy. See, everything you see around you is condensed energy. You're made of light beams. The fact that there was one physical creation, and science is unequivocal about this, there was one physical creation. The stuff that makes up your body, and the world around you, the chair you're sitting on, the floor on which the chair rests, has been in the universe since the creation. You witnessed the creation of the universe. You were present at the creation, not in your bodily form, but in the form of light beams.
الله نور السماوات والأرض نور على نور يهدي الله لنوره من يشاء ويضرب الله الأمثال للناس والله بكل شيء عليم.
You witnessed the creation of the universe. You were present at the creation, not in your bodily form, but in the form of light beams.
وَلَقَدْ ضَرَبْنَا لِلنَّاسِ فِي هَذَا الْقُرْآنِ مِنْ كُلِّ مَثَلٍ لَعَلَّهُمْ يَتَذَكَّرُونَ فَآمِنُوا بِاللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ وَالنُّورِ الَّذِي أَنزَلْنَا وَاللَّهُ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ خَبِيرٌ.
The reality is there's a substrate that has allowed this phenomenal complexity to exist, that things like DNA itself is complex, but it's a closed book. The real complexity of life is not in the DNA. The real complexity of life is the reading of the DNA, of which, of course, the DNA is self-structured to develop a system that can read it. The reading of the DNA, the complexity of life, is overwhelming. The question is, from where does it arise? How did light beams manage to do all these things, let alone to wonder about them? Because that's what's happening. We're condensed light beams. It sounds corny. We're condensed or poetic, that we are they're made of stardust, but we are. 5 billion years ago, everything you see around you, including what you see in the mirror when you brush your teeth in the morning, was stardust. And it just happened to become alive. And that stardust was made of the initial elements of the universe, the hydrogen and the helium, and a few other elements. And those elements were made of quarks, and those quarks were made of the light of creation. The light of creation shines in everyone. You just have to let it shine forth.
يوم ترى المؤمنين والمؤمنات يسعى نورهم بين أيديهم وبأيمانهم بشراكم اليوم جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها ذلك هو الفوز العظيم نورهم يسعى بين أيديهم وبأيمانهم يقولون ربنا أتمم لنا نورنا واغفر لنا إنك على كل شيء قدير.
The stuff that makes up your body and the world around you, the chair you're sitting on, the floor on which the chair rests, has been in the universe since the creation. You witnessed the creation of the universe. You were present at the creation, not in your bodily form, but in the form of light beams that eventually became alive, learned to send people to the sun, to the moon, learned to create a violin concerto that can so beautiful it can move a person to tears, all from condensed light beams. It's quite a stretch of the imagination that this merely happened by itself. But that's the understanding from a materialist, reductionist point of view. Light beams became alive, and somehow, not only did they become alive, but they became cognizant of being alive, cognizant of awareness, of joy. Light beams can laugh and feel joy. Light beams can sing. Light beams can love. But that's what happened, because the only thing that's the substrate of this universe is light beams, and that's what we're made of.
اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين وهذا صراط ربك مستقيما قد فصلنا الآيات لقوم يذكرون